All right, I'm Matthew Bellisario on the BellisarioSonic YouTube channel. I'm very excited to have with me a special guest today for an interview, taking time to talk to us about jazz record label, running a jazz record label. His name is Cory Weeds. I'm going to do just a brief interview to introduce him. It would take me probably 30 minutes to go through your entire resume here, but I'll just start off. People that are familiar with today's jazz they know you for all your live performances, your recordings, your reputation as a saxophone player. You're from Vancouver, British Columbia, and it looks like you started your recording career in 1997 with a band called People Playing Music. And you went on tour Canada, United States, Europe. You were a member of the Nightcrawlers, and you did your debut CD in 2007, and that was on your own label. And the album was nominated for Album of the Year at the National Jazz Awards in 2008. You now have, I think I counted 22 of your own releases as a leader, at least, if not more. And you've played with a ton of your jazz peers, Christian McBride, Joey DeFrancesco, Peter Bernstein, the list goes on. But what a lot of people may not know is you are the owner and founder of your own label, which you started in 2001. And you've now amassed over 300 recordings with your label, and you have a mixture of releases: archival releases, studio releases, live releases. I think I count 3 jazz imprints: Cellar Live, Cellar Music, and Reel to Reel. And I think at 2022 you partnered up with Spike Wilner to do the Smalls Live series, which I have a few of those here, which are absolutely fantastic. And then you started your own label, apparently, but when you started recording live at your own jazz club in Vancouver. So I'll go ahead and let you kind of start off and just let us know how you got started with your own label. What gave you the idea? You were already playing as a musician. So what kind of gave you the idea to start your own jazz label in Canada?
Yeah, well, first of all, let me say thank you very much for taking the time to reach out to me. I appreciate it very much. I'm always happy, as you'll quickly realize, I'm always happy to talk about this stuff. I love it. I live and breathe it every day, every second, every minute of my life. I bought the Cellar Jazz Club in 2000 with the generous support both emotionally, mentally, and financially of my parents, who were very far from rich or even well-off people. They just were not. But they recognized that their son had a vision, and I don't think my dad really agreed with that vision, but he supported me nonetheless. And in 2000, I opened the Cellar. And, at that time, I thought that it would be if we made it a year, it would have been a success. And I thought, man, we really need to record some stuff. So, after a year, when we go to business, I kind of got some memories, and something to show my kids or my grandkids or, whoever, that we had this incredible year, this 1 year in Vancouver that was really cool. As it turns out, as you sort of referenced, it went on much longer than a year, much longer than I anticipated. And to be quite honest with you, it still continues on. I still don't get it, how it continues on. So I really just installed some recording gear at the club and wanted to document what was happening at the club. I really didn't have designs of owning a record label, running a record label. I can tell you, I certainly did not envision having a label of 300 to 400 records. That I can tell you without question. But as it sort of started to develop, and as people knew that we had recording gear at the club, we started recording more artists. We've got an incredible granting system here in Vancouver, and we started accessing some of those things. And we released our first record in 2001. And then it just kind of snowballed from there. And then it started to become a little bit more known by some of the international people, and I can give you 3 really good examples. Two in particular that are incredible examples. And it's funny for me to think back to this, but if you think about Charles McPherson, the great alto saxophonist, he was, I would go as far as to say he was kind of a forgotten man for a lot of years, and I'm so thrilled that he is now getting the recognition he deserves for all of the contributions he's made to this music. I wish for his sake it came earlier, but I got Charles at a time when he was sort of a forgotten man, and he came to the club and he played with the rhythm section. He really liked them, and I asked him if he wanted to make a live record, and he said yes, and we made a live record. That was one of the first international people we had. And I would say it was the same situation with the great Dr. Lonnie Smith. The organ hadn't really kind of made a comeback. And certainly Dr. Lonnie Smith, again, was sort of a forgotten man. And he came to Vancouver, and I approached him about making a record for us, and he did, and it was a great record. So that was sort of the beginning of making records that were really going to have some reach for people. And then, of course, a lot of stuff happened in between there, but, the rest is history, as they say. That was sort of the jumping off point. Then we started getting into studio records. But it was primarily to capture music that was happening live at the club, at my club. In 2014, I made the decision to close my club. I had 2 young children. I was stressed out. I was tired. I had had enough. And I closed the club under my own volition, and decided I was going to do something different. And to be honest with you, I assumed the label would just kind of die with it.
Oh, really?
I hadn't really stated that publicly, but I just sort of thought like it's just sort of a natural winding down. And, the complete opposite happened. And the label started to gain some traction. The label gained some traction, and we were continuing to find creative ways to get this music out there. We did a lot more studio records. I started traveling to New York and started sort of operating like a regular label in terms of, doing studio dates and traveling to the epicenter of jazz, if you will. And then I would say that when COVID happened, I can only speak for me. I certainly don't want to speak for other labels, but there was a real shift towards the support of independent music and independent record labels. And, it's all relative. I'm not suggesting that all of a sudden, hundreds of thousands of dollars started showing up in the mail. But that COVID coupled with the label sort of reaching this point and sort of getting recognized kind of culminated at the same time and sort of pushed us up into a new stratosphere of notoriety, if you will. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that, that the label is standing on its own 2 feet and paying my mortgage and feeding my family. And it's not, it's not like that. It's a labor of love. And I happen to be in a very fortunate position, being Canadian, having access to a lot of grants, having people like Spike Wilner put a lot of trust and faith in me and the label and sort of handing over these masters to me and allowing me to run with them.
Yeah, these are fantastic.
Yep.
Love
So
to see these on record.
There's a lot of things that have happened and continue to happen along the way that have benefited me greatly. I'm very blessed. I'm very fortunate. I'm very lucky. And I'm very grateful. Having said that, I also work extremely hard. People know that I have a passion for the music, and I don't know, I get stuff done. I always say if you want to get something done, call a busy person. So that's sort of me in a nutshell, and the label continues to thrive, and it continues to put out incredible music. And we're in a position now where the label has been at a point now for the last several years where we can make the records we want to make, and we don't need to rely on grants, or we don't need to rely on investment or gifts. The label in that way can do what it wants to do. But again, the label is a secondary thing for me. It's not. It's something that sort of lives over here. And when I say secondary, I mean financially. Like, the label lives over here. I don't take any money from the label. It just lives here. We keep regurgitating, if you will, for lack of a better term, that money. It keeps turning over, and we keep making new records. I have my music career, my booking career, and all of that stuff that pays for my necessities of life. The label just sits over here. Having said that, the label also provides me a ton of opportunity, whether that be touring, and all that kind of stuff. So they all work hand in hand, but that's kind of the quick and dirty. I guess it wasn't that quick, but as I said, there's a lot of stuff that happened in between there, but that's essentially the nuts and bolts of how it started and how it continues.
So by, I guess, the time that was being taken from you running the club, you were able to put more effort into your own touring schedule as well as the record label. So you're able to kind of put more effort, I guess, into that, have more time to put into that.
Yeah, I mean, I've never been, I lucky I have a very supportive wife who understands that touring and stuff is part of what I do, but she also works full-time as a school teacher, and we have two very active children, and touring has always been something that's been difficult for me to do more of. So now I have to be very strategic about it. I'm also getting older, and traveling's a pain. I like sitting here. You can see it. You can see all my records in the background. Yeah. I got my saxophones here. I'm like, I don't need to leave my basement ever. This is my happy place. But yes, I mean, when I closed the club, at the time when I closed the club, it was a very scary time. I actually took a job with the American Federation of Musicians, the Vancouver local of the union. And it didn't work out for a number of different reasons that aren't important for our conversation here. But I was really looking at a job, I was sort of looking to get out. And, I sort of feel that, I'm 50 now. And even when that happened 10 years ago, I'm in this business, and I'm in it for good, and it's never, even if I try to get out of it, it's not going to let me get out of it. I have too much love for the music, and too much good stuff has happened. So now I just try to embrace it, and I try to do it all. I try to tour a little bit. I've got some traveling coming up in the fall, and I'm trying to just juggle stuff. I've sort of been thinking a lot lately about, I'm just picking this person out of thin air, but somebody like Chris Potter or Eric Alexander, who are my mentor. They're my friends, but they're my heroes. I grew up idolizing them, and sometimes I think about, why do I even bother picking up my saxophone when there's those two guys out there playing at such a high level? And my gift is that I'm able to do a lot of things quite well, and that I didn't put all my eggs in one basket, so to speak. And as much as I would love to play like Eric Alexander or Chris Potter, I don't know what they would say, but I think they've made some sacrifices that I don't think I was willing to make to become that good. So I'm kind of doing exactly what I want to do, and I'm involved. I always wanted to be involved in the music. I never had dreams of moving to New York and trying to turn the world on its ear and be like, oh my God, there's this Cory Weeds guy. He's the greatest thing ever. That was never my goal. My goal was just to be close to the music. And
you've got some great records. This one that just came out is wonderful.
And I don't mean to. I'm not saying that to demean myself or belittle myself.
Sure.
That's not what I'm trying. That's not what I'm trying to do. But it's I'm sure you interview a lot of people. You interview artists, and we all have that inner struggle about comparing ourselves. And I'm just trying to do it and swing and sound good and have some fun along the way. And I think for the most part, when I'm staying out of my head, I'm doing a pretty good job at it. So it
comes across in the recordings,
good.
For sure. What? So how do you? I would imagine, I'm guessing, but you can tell me if I'm wrong, how you choose artists for your labels. Are they from prior relationships that you already have playing with everybody, or do people come to you, and how do you choose those people?
I mean, first of all, I get a lot of emails. I get a lot of emails about people sending me their records and wanting to record. I operate, as I'm sure you're probably well aware, the landscape has changed in terms of how record labels operate. So it's no longer the 50s, 60s, 70s, or even 80s for that matter, or early 90s with the Young Lions, where I have $20,000 and I give everybody in advance. That's not the way it works. So I have some deals that operate like a standard record label, if you will, and then I have some creative deals where I work together with the artist and we go into business together. Champion Fulton would be one of those examples. And then I have other artists, like when I go to New York City in November, I'm recording Eric Alexander, and we're operating like a straight up record label. I'm paying him, I'm paying everything from start to finish. Then the next day, I do another record with Grant Stewart, and Grant Stewart is Canadian, so he falls under my there you go. He falls under my Canadian granting umbrella. And then I'm doing a record with Sam Dillon, great tenor saxophonist, and we're going into business together. So we're kind of covering half and half. As far as choice goes, I mean, I know what I want to record, and I know who I want to work with. But what has come with the success of the label is, as I mentioned off the top, or a minute ago, the many emails I get about people wanting to put their stuff out with the label. So I listen to the stuff, and I'm like, wow, this music is really fantastic. I don't have the resources to put it out because my finances are spoken for the next, year, if you will. So then I call the artist and I work with them. So, okay, how can we work together to get this out? So I have a model in which we can operate where the artist owns their master, but it comes out as Cellar Live. You would never know what ones those are because they're treated exactly the same way as the Cory Weeds record or the Champion Fulton record. So to you, it doesn't look any different.
Right.
So I would say in general, I choose. In that way, it's a fairly curated label, but I'm also always looking for opportunity. So like just as an example, like I made a record with Brian Charette, great organist from New York City, called Jackpot. We did that in New York. Brian is a dear friend. I love him very much. He said, I want to come to Vancouver because I really like that band I played with, and I want to make a record with you guys. And it's like, well, really? Like you have access to all the New York guys. Like, why do you want to make a record with us? He's like, because I love you guys. I know it's going to be cool. So he comes to Vancouver, we do 4 or 5 gigs, and then we go into the studio and we make a record. I've got a thing coming out with Nick Hempton, and Nick Hempton was kind of the same thing. Great saxophone player, originally from Australia, but he lives now in New York. And he came and he said, I think we should record live. And what we recorded sounded really good, and there's a record coming. So while I do have an idea in my brain of people that I'd like to work with and like to record, I can't do everything, and I do make some choices, and then some things just come to me by way of opportunity. They're just purely opportunistic records, another example that's really funny is Bria Skomberg. We have a new Bria Skomberg record.
Waiting for that to come out.
It's just coming out. That happened very late, and she's Canadian, so that fell under my granting thing. They were looking for a label. They had the music basically all done. I said, of course. She's not from Vancouver, but she's from a suburb of Vancouver. I'm like, of course I will put that out. And it got 5 stars in Downbeat just the other day. I don't think it's out yet. I think it's the next issue. And my emails are going crazy, and people are buying vinyl and records and CDs. It's not even out yet. So, I think I might be the guy when if you take labels like some of my favorite labels like Smoke Sessions, for example,
right?
They're very curated, so they do their thing and that's it. Then you have some of the bigger labels like obviously like Blue Note, and so they're also very curated. And then there's Cellar Music, and they know me as a musician, so I think they feel like I'll be sort of sympathetic or empathetic to their concerns and their desires, and I'm willing to, so I think that's probably why people come to me, because they're not coming to me for the money. I think they're coming to me because they know they know that I'm seeing it from both sides. That can be tricky from time to time, but 99% of the time it's fine. And I it's important. I'm never the kind of guy, like I'll give you an example. I did a record with Carl Allen, Christian McBride, and Chris Potter. And, that was obviously I paid them. But I have had Carl Allen in the driver's seat with me the whole time, on cover, on everything, because it's really important for me as a label owner to have an artist that is proud about what we're releasing and happy about what they're releasing. I could have said to Carl, I gave you your money, see you later. Because that's the way it worked in the old days.
Mm-hmm.
And Carl's not that much older than me, but he was around in those days, and I want the artist to be proud. I want the artist to engage. Artist engagement is so much more important now than it was 40 years ago. You would just hand the record over to the label. There's no selling records off stage. They would be in a record store. You think Hank Mobley was like carrying around records trying to sell? I mean, come on. So it's important now to engage with the artists and be working with artists who are willing to engage.
So my next question, which kind of leads into another question, but how do you decide what's going to be on record and what's not vinyl record? Because like these to me would be fantastic to have as a vinyl record series, but obviously these would probably take 2 records to get all the music on for one.
Yeah.
But what goes into your thoughts on that? Because
it's funny. That's a question I get asked a lot, and when I saw it in your show notes that you were going to ask us, like, here we go again. And I don't dislike the question. And, this interview is on me and about me, so I'll preface it by saying this is my opinion. Everybody is saying, vinyl's back, vinyl's back. And it is. Make no mistake, vinyl is back in a huge way. This is what I'm finding. As an independent artist, and maybe I'm a bad example to use because maybe my name is a little bit better known than some others, but I don't think people all over North America are going into their record stores on Saturday afternoon and flipping through the jazz section and going, $35 for Cory Weeds. This looks cool. I'll get it. I don't think they're doing that. I think they're flipping through the used bins, and I think they're flipping through the new bins and still buying Kinda Blue. And right. I think they're buying the tone poets and the name artists. I've had very limited, I was going to say poor, but I've had very limited success selling vinyl through my distributor. My distributor's great. They do a great job. It's not the distributor's fault. But even an Eric Alexander record, that Champion Fulton record behind you, that's done okay. But we did I don't know if you got the Mike Ledon, the Choir record.
No, I haven't gotten that one.
We haven't sold any of those through my distributor. It's got Mike Ledon, Eric Alexander, Vincent Herring. So where you sell a lot, where I am depending on selling vinyl is the artist. So the reason Champion's record came out on vinyl is because she bought 150. Warren Wolf's record is coming out on vinyl because he bought 100.
You do limited pressings, right? You do like 300 or 500.
Who am I missing? Miki Yamanaka. We did her first record. She bought 150. This new one that's coming out called Chance, she bought 250. So now all of a sudden, for me to make my money, because if you're selling 1,000 records, that's one thing, but we're selling maybe 400 if we're lucky. The margin there is not very good. So, right. And then I put out a Mike Ledon record or an Eric Alexander record because those are my guys. I love that music, and I don't care. I'm just going to do it. In some ways, it's a vanity project because Eric isn't buying any from me to sell off stage. I'm mad at him for that only because he's walking away from a lot of money, but he doesn't want to deal with it, and that's fair.
Okay.
Some artists don't like to deal with merch. They're like, nope, I'm not doing anything.
Really?
Whereas
Okay.
Champion and I, or whoever, will cart it around because, I did a tour with Champion. We sold 60 records on the road. Well, you look at the cost of those records versus what you're selling them for. Like, we each made an extra $800 or $900. It's a big deal.
Right.
So to take something like Jesse Davis and Dave Liebman and press vinyl, I'd love to press vinyl, but how am I going to sell them? So, and maybe I'm wrong. Like, maybe Dave Liebman is enough, and Jesse Davis for that matter. Maybe their names are just enough,
right,
that you could do it. But then I'm depending solely on distributor. So when you're selling to a distributor, I'm getting $14 a unit. So I got to sell 200 to make that worth it.
Yeah, and that's what I try to point out on this channel is that only 4% of records purchased right now are jazz. 4% of the total. And I think there's 43 million records that sold last year, so do the math. That's only a couple of million records for everybody, including Blue Note and everybody else, and all the reissues and all that stuff. So, yeah, because I was also looking at doing something, and it's you have to get 1,000 made or something, and then everybody's complaining about the prices because they're going for $25 to $35 for a record, and people are complaining about it, and yeah, I get it because the economy and everything. But it's difficult to get your money back after you invest all that in these.
It's a tough call. And look, if I thought, I agree with you 100%. The market can only handle so much. And, I know you're going to ask about my archival stuff, and I'll bring that up then too. But,
sure.
We put out our archival stuff. It's $50 and $60 a record. Zev Feldman is putting out 10 records at Record Store Day. The market can't deal with it.
Right.
So how do you figure? Well, you do lower numbers. Well, if you do lower numbers, the manufacturing actually goes up. Like if somebody came to me tomorrow and said, if you take all the records in my storage unit and you sell them at $20 across the board, I would say, where do I sign? I'll do a sale on Bandcamp tomorrow, $20 for the doubles, the single. I would do it in a heartbeat. If I did something like that on Bandcamp tomorrow, I might sell 20, maybe 30. So it's hard, and it's kind of depressing because I got a storage locker full up the street of vinyl that's incredible music. Can't sell it. It's hard.
Right.
So.
And has Amazon helped you on that? Because I noticed some of your stuff is on Amazon.
Helps a little bit. And I have a distributor, and you also. Amazon goes through my distributor, and if I go to my distributor and say I want you to slash everything half price, then I'm going to piss off Smoke Sessions. I'm going to piss off Blue Note, and so there is like a what's the word? Loyalty is the wrong word, but there is a standard that you should What I do on Bandcamp is my own business, but again, I don't have the reach that something like Blue Note does that would affect that. If I could sell we did a thing, speaking of $20, we did a thing on Bandcamp where we had 5 records for $100 Canadian. I think I sold 5 sets. They were all great records too.
That's what's killing me.
It's not that I won't continue to do vinyl, because you can see I'm a vinyl guy. I'll continue to do vinyl, but I got to be really selective, and I have to be selective, and I also have to be very realistic, So Miki Yamanaka, if she continues to record for me, I'll do vinyl every time. She sells to Champion Fulton. Every time I'll do vinyl. Just like, where do I sign? Because they're out there selling them, and they do sell. That's where you see people buying vinyl, is at shows. But if you think that, like I said, the Saturday morning record flippers are gonna come across a Cory Weeds and Champion Fulton record and spend $35, I don't think it's happening.
Yeah. Well, that's part of the my focus on this channel. I don't know if you've looked, but I do a mixture. I probably do like 60 or 70% new releases, new
Right.
jazz releases, and then I still review the Blue Note, some of the Tone Poets, that kind of stuff,
Right.
because it's important to me that everybody's missing out on this new music that is fantastic and is keeping the jazz tradition alive. And anyway, that's kind of been my focus is to promote these different artists, and like yourself and these people that are playing great jazz that nobody knows about. So that's another reason why I wanted to have you on here.
It is very important. It's very important, and I hope that, I mean, I think it can continue to grow. I don't know that it's going to go anywhere. So I mean, that kind of promotion, yeah, I mean, it really helps. My thing too has always been, I'm a one record at a time guy. So like, if I sell a couple records a day, then I'm happy. It's just one record at a time. I'm not, oh, you didn't buy 300. It's like, no, it's just one at a time, man. One at a time. Just keep it sort of rolling,
So let me ask you about then your different imprints, because you've got Cellar. This is on the regular Cellar label. This is on Cellar Live. This one is on Reel to Reel. So tell us a little bit about that.
I will. So what happened is, when I started the label, it was called Cellar Live. And that was because we were essentially recording records live at my club. Sometime in maybe 2010, maybe a little later. Yeah, probably. Anyways, doesn't matter when. I changed. It must have been when the club closed. I changed the name of my company to the Cellar Music Group. We rebranded the Cellar Music Group, and that way I could do all of my activities under the same umbrella. I had Cellar Live, Cellar Music, so I was trying to delineate between live recordings and studio recordings. The problem is, as we get through, I can't remember which one it is, but we have a live record, that's got the Cellar Music. In fact, I think the Champion one might be a Cellar Music one, isn't it?
Yeah, this one's just Cellar Music.
Well, that should be Cellar. That should be Cellar Live. So at this point, at this juncture, it doesn't matter. Everybody knows Cellar, so it's fine. But it was supposed to be Cellar Live and Cellar Music. Reel to Reel was something that I founded with Zev Feldman, which was really fun. Zev became a Facebook friend, and I became a big fan of the work that he was doing. We became fast friends. We did a couple of events here in Vancouver. A couple of I called them kind of retail events. We became fast friends. Long and short of it is, we started Reel to Reel together, and we started with Cannonball Adderley and Etta Jones. It's such a fun process. It's very expensive. It's very you have to be very patient. Stuff can take a really long time, and it's a really hard business. You're usually dealing with live recordings. And live recordings aren't thought of the same way by radio and press as studio recordings. You're often dealing with recordings where the sound quality is not the same as it would be for, a controlled environment in the studio. People get confused by that. That's sort of what an archival recording means in a way. And so it's a tough business, and it has become tougher for a number of reasons. Of course, Zev is one of the most famous producers of this music in the world, and you saw what he did last Record Store Day, with 10 releases. And he's dealing with the heavyweights. He's got a lot behind him, whether it's his own label or whether it's Resonance. So he's dealing with the heavyweights. He's dealing with Mingus. He's dealing with Bill Evans. He's dealing with,
Sonny Rollins.
Sonny Rollins, Art Tatum. I mean, these are big, big, big names. So he puts out 8 of those, and then I put out my Shelly Manne and my Jack McDuff records, which are equally incredible records, but they don't do as good because so there's that. Then you add craft recordings and all of the other companies now that are reissuing acoustic sounds, craft recording, all of them, and they're all $40 and up. Like, there's only so much, so you line up all those records in a row, and you add up all the prices, everybody's going to buy the Sonny, everybody's going to buy the Sun Ra, everybody's going to buy the Art Tatum, and then they're going to choose between the other 15. And with absolute respect to my releases and to the artistry of Jack McDuff and Shelly Manne, like, those aren't going to win. So it's becoming very difficult, and we do have more releases planned for reel to reel. But it's a business model that is very difficult to make work.
So the expenses. Go ahead.
It's important work.
Yes.
But it's difficult.
So I think from our point of view, record collectors, or people that watch the channel, it looks like, okay, you've got these these recordings that have been unreleased by, Shelly Manne. Those you already have the recording. All you have to do is take it into the studio, clean it up, do some mastering, get it sent to the record presses, pick your record plant, put it together. It looks, and I really want to hear what a little bit more the details, because I think people think that those are much easier. It's like, well, you got the material, it's already recorded. All I got to do is clean it up, make it sound better, master it, get it to the record plant, put it out, and boom, I've got a release.
I mean, you've outlined you've outlined the 9 out of 10 things that are the easy part. There are 2 parts of it that are more difficult. The first one is that, so let's say you call me, Matthew, and you say, hey, the Alabama Jazz Festival has all these tapes of, Hank Mobley, he was here in 1961, recording with his roll call band, and we've got this live set, and man, we're happy just to give it to you if you put it out. Okay, great. But you don't own anything. The only thing you own is the tape that it was recorded on, and that tape isn't worth anything if you can't get clearance from 2 parties. 1, the artist. 2, in the case of Hank Mobley, his record label. So Blue Note, he was under contract with Blue Note in the 60s. Therefore, Blue Note has first right of refusal on anything that is presented to come out while he was under contract with that company. Now, do you take it to Blue Note? Yeah, you probably are going to take this to Blue Note because it's Hank Mobley. And that's going to create a big stir. So you can bet that if you don't go to Blue Note and you put it out and it starts getting all this press, somebody's going to come knocking at your door. With somebody like, I'm trying to think of somebody that I can use to not get anybody in trouble, with somebody like a lesser known artist, sure, that's part of a label that's part of a huge conglomerate that is run by some guy in a suit in New York or LA that doesn't even know that name, then maybe you play dumb and you do it and hope they don't come calling. So that's the first part. The second part is then you have to contact the artist
or the family, right?
In most cases the artist is dead. You have to contact the family. And the problem with contact, it's not about just contacting the family. It has to be a family that is operating an official estate. And I don't know what the legalities behind, but it has to be the person responsible for the estate of that person. And it has to be everybody. So, typically you would go after the leader and you would get them to agree, and you take care of each sideman separately. You have a deal set out, and if you can't, and I'm not, it won't be any secret to anybody, there are many sidemen on our records who have not been compensated. But the second they call, the second an estate member calls, say, hey, you did, I will say, oh yes, we have that money set aside. We paid this person this much, and we were thinking that would be the same as you would get. We're not dealing with thousands and thousands of dollars. I'm not driving around a big fancy car, based on what I'm making on archival releases. So it's never been an issue. But yeah, it's difficult, and it can take a really long time because, as you can imagine, some guy from Vancouver calling up the estate of Shirley Scott saying, I want to do this thing, it's going to be great, and we're going to do this, we're going to do all this stuff. And they're like, well, wait a minute, I got to go to my lawyer. And, they get dollar signs in their eyes, and they don't really care. I mean, in the case of Shirley's estate, they were great. But, so it's tough, and you have to be really patient. And sometimes when you think something is dead in the water, one email you get, and there it is, it's on again. And the Shirley Scott one took a long time. Pepper Adams, we never did find out. Walter Bishop was relatively easy. Shelley Mann was easy. And you start looking for people that know the families, or, and you start utilizing these people that can help you get to where you need. So that's the long process. And then the second part of it is, and I learned this from Zev, and I struggle with this a little bit given the sort of the streaming habits of people, but we do full on packages. Like we're trying to revert back to the early days of liner notes with essays, and
yes.
And you look at I just had it out, I put it away, the Sonny Rollins package for the late, I mean, it's incredible.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
And that takes a long time, and especially when Zev is very particular about who he likes to use and why he likes to use them and how he likes it to be presented. So it's a process, and it's a process that can take a very long time,
Interesting. Well, thank you for explaining that, because I think,
no problem.
That's for the consumer, the people that are collecting these, it's like, this, all that behind the scenes things that are going on, the average person who's collecting records has no clue as to what's involved with any of this stuff.
Yeah.
Which brings me.
It's a whole process. It really is a process. And it's fun, but it can also be very taxing and very exhausting.
When it comes to new releases, the Champion record, or the Grant Stewart record, or any of these others, you did a couple of these Emmett. These are fantastic, which again would be awesome on record. But and actually he's got quite a following, so maybe those would work.
He does, yeah. Those would be good on. Those would be great on record. He's with Mac Avenue now, so it's a little bit tricky. So who knows? But you're right. They would be good on vinyl. Those ones would be great.
Yeah, those would probably do well. So how do you, as far as going into making a record, a CD, you're using different studios, you're recording at different places. I'm assuming it's all digital. I don't know if you've done any actual analog recording on tape, which is another thing I wanted to get to and just talk to you a little bit about. But how do you pick the studios? Do you choose the studios with the artists as far as how it's going to be produced? Because I know you're co-producing, you're producing some of them, you're executive producers on some of the other ones.
Yeah, I mean, when we do our stuff here in Vancouver, I have 2 or 3 studios that I use. Sometimes that's dictated by size of band. It's dictated by pianist. So if I'm doing a piano trio record, for example, I might pick one studio here over another studio. In New York, I like to use 2 pretty exclusively. I like to use Rudy's, and I like to use GB's Juke Joint, which is a great studio in Long Island City. A lot of times I'm pretty up on what's happening in the city, and I don't, for me, I have budgets. I work in budgets. So if I have a budget, and somebody's coming to me and saying, well, I want to do it at Sears Sound in New York City, which is a lot more expensive than what I do, I got to figure out, like, why do you want to do that, and what benefit is that going to be to us? And sometimes there'll be something in there that's like, okay, that's important, for one reason or the other. To be honest with you, I haven't had very many of those issues. I'll get some stuff that's already been recorded there that will come, so it doesn't even involve me anyways. But when I'm starting from the first position, I want the artist to be comfortable. If they don't like my choices, but they like a couple of other choices, as long as it fits within my budget, then I'm cool. It doesn't matter.
Have you had anybody ask to do an analog recording and kind of do like a special release to promote this as an all analog? Everybody's into. That's another thing. If people are into it in the record community, so have you thought about that?
I have, but it comes down again to I mean, that's way more expensive. I love the idea. It's way more expensive, and is it going to sell? So the two things I can say about that are I have recorded some to tape of my records, but essentially what happens is we record it to tape and then dump it back simultaneously digitally. Now, it does enhance the sound without question, but to an audio file, they'd be like, no, you can't do that.
People.
So, fair enough. I can tell you, and I was going to make an announcement about this, but he has asked me not to, but I am doing a record for Kevin Gray that I'm extremely excited about.
Oh, yeah.
Now, that is going to be all analog. From the second we get on the plane, it's all analog, to the second we return home. So I'm really excited about that.
And he's done two like that so far, I think, right?
He's done two. Kristen Adkins
awesome.
and Anthony Wilson. And I'm so flattered and honored that he would choose me to do that. And I can tell you right now, he can't find a more appreciative guy for what I can't wait. It's myself and David Hazeltine and Byron Landham and Neil Miner. I wrote a tune for Jim Rotundi, and David Hazeltine wrote a tune for Jim Rotundi, and we're going to do a couple Cedar Walton tunes. I can't wait. It's in November. I love the idea, but it has to work. Now, somebody like Kevin Gray can make it work because he is like the Taylor Swift of the audio world. So, he has a reach that, like that right. I don't have. So, part of it, the funny part about it is I'll get these emails. The second I don't have something available in 96K, I get an email. Like, is this going to be available in 96K? Really? I'm like, well, it's easy to record in 96K now, but it's like, well, like for the 7 people that want it or the 7 people that I can access, it's just not worth me going through all of those steps to be able to get $3 more.
Right.
So I love the all analog vibe. I have thought about it. But it's just not something that I'm really set up to do. But Kevin Gray is set up to do it, and I'm so excited. I can't wait.
That's awesome. Well, I look forward to that.
It's going to be great. It's going to be really, really good.
A lot of these are nice sounding records, by the way. These are
thank you
for modern digital recordings. I think they're pretty warm sounding, which brings my next question that people talk about, and it seems that more people are doing this now, is that they're making a master for digital and they're mastering for vinyl. And I don't know, I know not everybody's doing that, but I'm seeing it more and more on newer records. I noticed it on the new Protocol record with Simon Phillips. He's mastering them for record. Anyway, what are your thoughts on that? And does that improve, you think, that give you that more warm sound by doing that, by compensating?
My thoughts about it are this, and again, this is an opinion. I'm first of all, I'm not an audiophile. I have a great stereo system, and and I love listening to records, but I'm not an audiophile. We do a separate master, but we don't mix separately for vinyl. So, in my limited understanding, essentially what we do on the record side is the master for vinyl gets mastered at a few dB lower. Okay. Than CD or digital. So it comes down. I'm not smart enough to know why. I have a few guesses, but so I try really hard in the studio I like warm. I definitely like warm. So I will help with mic choice. I like tube mics. I like the sound of tubes. Depending on the kind of band that it is, I will sort of say to my engineer, like, this is what I'm trying to achieve with this particular band and this particular record. And I'm not going to lie. I struggle. Like, sometimes with my own stuff, like, I'll go in and say, yeah, I want it to sound like Rudy from Hank Mobley's Roll Call or Soul Station. And then sometimes I'm like, I really like the Max Bullum and Crisscross vibe too. Like, that's so at the end of the day, I'm a warmth guy. I don't like things that sound too brittle. So because I'm not going into, because I'm not, the market that I'm dealing with are not necessarily you or Kevin Gray's people or audiophiles. So I have to be careful. So I don't want to, I'm not going to take a completely trashy digital source and give it to a terrible presser and say, hey, let's do it. But, you know, I do these things called Sunday schools. I haven't done one for a while. It's like an Instagram live thing where I talk about the business of music. And Kevin Gray was on with me one day. And I said, okay, Kevin, you tell me right now, does 180 versus 150 gram make any difference in sound? He said, absolutely not. And I said, okay, cool. I'm never pressing a 150 gram record because the second I do, people can be like, oh, you know, too bad you didn't do it on 180 gram. So, and I'm not trying to take shots at audio
totally
files.
Understand what you're saying.
You know what I mean? It's like trying to figure, like, what's your market? And what my market is, I'm trying to move as many units as I can, and I'm trying to move a unit so when somebody's at a Champion Fulton concert, even when they don't have a record player, they see that big, pretty cover, and they're like, oh, I'll pay $40 for that, sure. Can you sign the top? That's what I care about. When I'm in my living room by myself or with my wife having a glass of wine listening to music, then I might be like, well, this particular record doesn't sound good because I don't like the pressing, or I'm listening to the pressing more. But the market I'm trying to sell to is different, and that doesn't mean that I'm taking less care. It just means I'm keeping it in perspective, you know.
Right. And like I said, these all sound good. I mean, I'm not really considered an audiophile either. All the stuff I have is mid-fi.
Right, you know, that's what I am.
That's what I call it. And I would love to be able to afford to buy hi-fi stuff, as you know. You can spend a fortune on all that stuff. But I think most of the people that are buying records are buying it for the music, first off. I hope anyway. You have certain collectors, a certain group of people that it has to be in, all those guys. But you know, when it comes to something like this is awesome, right? So fantastic sounding. I think, you know, this I think sounds wonderful. And I really like the way this sounds. So to me, it can be digital and sound good if it's done correctly, if it's mastered, and you know,
I agree.
I don't have a problem with that.
Yeah,
and actually,
I agree.
I think it's improving.
Go ahead.
I think it's improving. The digital technology is also improved, I think. That's a question I wanted to ask you because you've kind of gone through the recording process from, I mean, you started back in the, late 90s, and you've been recording ever since. And so there has definitely improvements in the overall sound quality, the processing. If you're using plugins in the box, doing your mastering, and there's a lot of things that have come a long way that make it sound much better.
Yeah.
So
I agree.
I think and it's also, I think, the way that it's initially recorded too.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's where I put most of, if not all of the focus is, let's make sure let's not try to fix anything later. Let's try to get the best source we can, you know, and I think there are ways to do that. Like I'll always try to take a DI from the bass, for example. Bass players hate me, and they're afraid that I'm going to use that more than I'm going to use the bass mic. And I'm like, in a live situation, I'm like, no, I'm never going to do that. I'm not stupid. And quite frankly, I don't like 1970s Xanadu bass sounds. Like, I don't want that. But in a live setting, when you've got all this other stuff going into the bass mic, if you have a DI, you've got something there just to give it a little floor and a little presence. Just bring it up a little bit, and then all that crap coming into the bass mic is less of an issue. And some bass players just will not let me do it, and it's really hard to deal with. You know, and I fight with engineers too. I'm like, can we just put a baffle up, you know, this halfway up the bass? And they say, well, sound's still going to go over. I'm like, yeah, it is going to go over, but it's going to be less. So that's sort of my I always think about the bass first. When I hear a record, and I haven't always won with this, but when I hear a record, I want to be able to transcribe the bass lines. If I can't hear the bass lines, then something didn't work. And there are some records we have where I can't do that, and I know what those situations were, and there's nothing I can do. But if I can hear the bass player and pick out the notes, then I'm happy. Then I think everything else, easy is not the right word, but everything else should settle fine. And, you know, if we're dealing, I want it to be warm. So, you know, my engineer that I use here all the time, it's the same guy. He knows what I want. You know, so we don't even talk about warmth anymore. I just hear it and go, yeah, it's perfect. You know, I have my own mic for my saxophone, and I like a lot of tube gear. And, you know, we've got this miking system for piano out of Europe. And they're metal, little metal mics, and they sort of operate the same way a bass DI does. So he places those, and then he uses all his expensive stuff, and then it's great because you've got this really strong bass that you can just bump up just to give it a little
bit.
You know, it's fun. It's fun to try to make that stuff sound really good. You know.
How many tracks were you using? I'm sure it's probably changed, but when you were recording at your club or when you're recording at a club,
usually 8.
That's what I was wondering because I
usually 8. And what I'll tell you is that when I was doing it, it was 8 because I could barely handle 8. When I had a pro in there, he would always, like in the early days, we're using 8-ats, so he would stack 2 8-ats, so he would have 16. So it would be like 1 saxophone, 1 trumpet, 3 piano, 2 bass, 3 or 4 drums, and then 2 room mics. And then if you only wanted to do it with 8, like when we did the Charles record, I think it was 1 alto, 2 piano, 3 drums, maybe even 1 bass, and then we taped the emceeing. So so stuff like that. Now, of course, it's much easier. You have a computer, you know, you have as many tracks as you want. It doesn't matter. It's much easier that way. But yeah, I mean, I would say, you know, 12 for a quartet or a quintet. 12 tracks should be enough.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah. Because I did here in we have a jam session here in Birmingham, and I recorded this as a little promo CD live, and this is Jose Carr, who's an Alabama Jazz Hall of Fame trumpet player, and so we did a little documentary on him. But I brought the Tascam out, you know, 8-track Tascam, set it down, and recorded live. But I also did the same thing. I got a DA from the bass and from the keyboard player, so that you could add that in, so that you can make sure that you can, you know, like you were saying, you bump it up just a little bit. But like, I was wondering.
Not? You know, why not, right?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's the way I feel about it.
So what are your favorite, right now, if Cory Weeds is sitting down to listen to a record, what are some of your favorite records? I think people would be interested to know, you know, some of your favorites.
Well, that's a good question.
I mean, you got a big collection back there.
I'm trying to think of what I've been, I'm going to cheat for a minute. And because, you know, it's weird, like with my family and just being as busy as we are, I'll go through these times where I don't listen to anything at all, and I don't even turn my stereo on. And then I have these times where I listen to a lot. So here's a few things. I've been really listening to a lot of Ben Webster, and the two that I've been listening to, and that may, for people that know me or listen to my music, they might find that surprising because that's not how I play. But sometimes listening to somebody like Ben, for a saxophone player like me, it's just good to kind of simplify, you know. And Ben could play so much with so little. So I've been listening to the reissue of Soulville.
Oh yeah.
And the reissue of with the Oscar Peterson Trio, which might be one of my favorite records of all time. Love that. So I've been checking out those two. I've been checking out Sonny Stitt Blows the Blues, which is another.
I want that one. I don't have it yet. I want
reissue.
That one.
I went through a whole period of just listening to that Sonny Rollins box that we talked about earlier from Zev, from back to front. I had a great saxophone player up here from New York that probably not a lot of people know. His name's Nick Green. We did a record with him on the label, and he reminded me of Jackie McLean's Blues Nick, which is not one. I mean, I've listened to it before, but I kind of forgot about it because there are other ones I like. That's a great record. And And I've been doing these. I don't play cordless trio very often, mainly because I'm scared. But I really like playing cordless trio, and so I pulled out Joe Henderson, State of the Tenor, live at the Village Vanguard. So I've been checking out a little bit of that. So yeah, those are some of the things I've been listening to. Some new stuff I've been listening to. Tardo Hammer, who's a great pianist from New York City, just released a new trio record that should have come out on my label, but that's a story for another day. I'm mad at myself about that one. But that's a great record. I can't remember what it's called. I'd show it to you, but it's upstairs.
Okay.
And this is going to sound odd because I'm promoting my own label, and that's not really what I mean, but there's a young singer by the name of Venetia Gould that we recorded last year. That her record, it's not out yet. It's not out till the new year, but we just got copies of it in.
Oh, cool.
She is so phenomenally talented, and she's an incredible songwriter and a very, very unique voice. And I'm really, really excited about that record. And then we have this record I'm excited about, too. I don't know if you know this name, Neil Swing. Oh, yeah, of course you know this name. This is his latest with Steve Davis, Rini Rosnes, Quincy Davis, and it's awesome. So, it's I don't mind plugging my own records.
Hey,
basically, I'm putting records together that I want to listen to. But there's so much great music out there. So
yeah, there is. Well, I guess to close out, can you tell us just a little bit about this record here? This was just in Downbeat, actually. This last issue, I actually had Champion on the channel. What was your idea here? Because she said that it was a little bit different for her doing live in the studio, where you had people sitting in the studio watching you guys play. So is this the first time you've done that, or is this?
Yes and no. I mean, in that intimate setting, yes. But we have done that before. I'm trying to think. So the Ulysses Owens Jr. record, Ben Patterson organ record called I can't remember what it's called. Mickey's new record, Chance. These were all done at Rudy's, and they all had a studio audience. And it's a great concept. I think it's a cool thing to do. But that one was a little different because we were treating it like a studio record. And the way that came about was Jazz YYC, which is a presenting organization in Calgary, Alberta, which is the next province over from BC. We had a tour booked, and we were trying to get a gig. And I called my friend, and I said, could you book us in Calgary? And he said, I've got this idea. I want to have a donor experience. So, all of our big donors and our people can come to the show, and we'll do a record, and we'll help you kind of put it out. So it's great. Sounds good. So it was really, that's all it was. But yeah, it was a little bit different showing up and having headphones on and thinking about it. Like, they weren't clapping. And then I think we did a set where they didn't clap, and then another set where they could act like they were at a jazz club. I mean, it really didn't change much. I mean, in fact, I think it sort of made it easier because I find that the studio can be very limiting in many ways. So when there's an audience there, you can kind of relax a little bit and have a little fun. It was at the end of a long tour, so I think Champion and I got in a big fight that day, which was, I don't know if she told you about that, but,
No,
just like regular musician fighting, But we pulled it together, and I'm very proud of that record. I have a very strong connection to her musically. I consider her a very, very dear friend. I spoke with her today, as a matter of fact. And we always just had a connection musically from day one. It was very sort of odd. There was no pretense or no, it just, we worked well together. I think part of it, I was saying to her today, part of it is that I've spent most of my life being a leader, and I have not done a lot of side person stuff. And even though, this is billed as my record and it's a duo, I'm acquiescing to her and to the vocal part of it. And I'm just so happy to be able to make music without thinking about the music. You know, like, hey, you want to do that tune? Great, we'll do that. Like, it doesn't matter to me. It's very freeing and it's very relaxing for me. Whereas when I'm with my own groups, you know, I'm always thinking about every aspect of everything all the time. You know, like this and that. And so, I'm really happy with the way that record turned out. It's I don't play alto as much as I like to anymore, and so that's also another opportunity for me to play alto. And it feels just like a nice culmination of our friendship, and so I was happy with how it turned out. And you know, we didn't put it out on CD at first because it was just going to be vinyl. And then of course all the CD people bitched.
Oh, really?
We put it, then we put it out on CD. You can't win these days, right? So you know, it's like So.
Yeah. So do you think it's more difficult? So when you go into the studio to record something like this, or even just a regular studio recording, obviously you can, okay, let's do one take, two, another take, three takes, whatever you want, or you can even edit it if you want to after the fact. Are you do a lot of editing, or do you ever take, like, you know, I do a lot of reading on record production, and you go to Columbia Records, Georgia Vakian, or one of those guys. They'll take the beginning of a take and the end of another take and all this kind of stuff, or they'll even shorten the tunes up to make them fit on a record for mass consumption. But what's your idea on editing? And
I think we did some editing. I don't think there was a ton. What I will say is that we treated that record like we were in the studio. So we didn't treat it like it was a live show. We treated it like, no, you're in the studio, and that's it. You're in the studio, and if you want to start in the in the middle of a tune and do an insert, if you want to start it again, if you screwed up, you do it again. If you wanted to do 3 takes of a tune, you could do that. So we treated it like that. So in that way, and then there was no sort of pressure there was no pressure to like get it the first time. We had played so much. We'd played so much leading up to that there wasn't that much of that we were so ready for it. We kind of knew what we were going to record. I think there was a few problems, with a couple things, but it was pretty laid back. So we'll have even though there's no studio audience, when I do the thing with Kevin Gray, there's no mixing. I mean, you're going straight to 2-track.
Right.
So if you stop, then you're stopping, and he's not going to edit. There's no editing. And I'm a little nervous about that. So at the same time, when I'm not nervous when I do a live gig. I'm not like, oh my God, like if I play that, I can't go back and fix it. You need to have that same attitude in the studio.
Right.
And I know the argument is like, well, this is like preserved forever and people can, but
that's part of jazz, in my opinion. To me, that's
you have to have the mindset of let it go, just go and let it go, and that's what it was. And it's so. But as an artist, we all struggle with that. We all try to get it, but it's funny. Like you're doing I don't do it much anymore because I don't have time, but I like to do jazz radio, and for a while I was taping it at my house. And I hated it because I wouldn't like my monologue and I would redo it. And then I wouldn't like something else. This is so stupid. I never had this problem when I did it live. So I actually got a setup so I could do it live. So I didn't have the opportunity to go. And it was so much more fun for me, So
yeah.
You have to have the mentality of just play it, just let it go,
Yeah, I do the same thing when I'm making these videos. Sometimes I'll go back and look at it like,
I could have done this. I could have asked this differently.
Yeah, but it is what it is.
It's a conversation, and that's what music is. Music is it's a conversation. So yeah. So I don't remember much about that day and the difference of having those people in, other than they really appreciated it and it was really cool, and I think it lightened us up a little bit. So,
Yeah, oh, that's cool. And yeah, unique experience for them, I'm sure. So they got to go sit in a recording studio and watch a record being made.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's really
cool.
neat.
Yeah.
Cool. And how long did that take you guys? Was that like a whole day or a whole evening?
No, I think they had scheduled, if I'm not mistaken, we might have done 2 shows. So I think we did like something like 3 to 4, 10, and then 5 to 6, 10 or something like that. Yeah, so it wasn't long. And then we had a bunch of stuff and we edited. And I think the CD is a little bit longer, so I think, or the digital is a little bit longer. So yeah, it was cool.
Awesome. Well, is there anything else you'd like to add or let people know about, what else is coming up here? What projects are you, I guess I was looking online, you're going to be playing upcoming maybe next week or two?
Yeah, it's a little, well, actually I have a gig tonight with my dad. My dad's a guitar player, so I'm playing at Frankie's. I run a jazz club here in Frankie's here in Vancouver called Frankie's.
Okay.
One of my main gigs. I'm playing with my dad tonight, and then I'm going to try to turn my phone off and take a vacation, which for me is very hard to do, but I'm going to try. And then September ramps up. It's crazy. I've got a little tour with Jerry Weldon, and we're making a record. And then I got that Kevin Gray thing, and I got a bunch of stuff. So yeah, I'm doing cool things. The label is busy. I mentioned I'm going to New York, and we've got a bunch of really cool records coming out in the fall. Venetia Gould, Ben Patterson's got a record coming out. Miki Yamanaka's got an actual record coming out.
I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah. So actual LP, and I'm working with this young tenor player who's actually Canadian, but he's in New York, named Jacob Chung. Phenomenal player. He's got a record coming out. So there's lots of good stuff coming out. I'm excited. I'm blessed. There's no shortage of exciting things happening. So.
Well, you're a busy guy. I appreciate you taking this time to talk to me, and hopefully we can do it again. I'm sure there'll be other records to talk about. It's really.
I wanted to ask you. You're wearing a Tower Records shirt. Have you seen the documentary called All
I
Things?
did. Isn't that awesome?
Isn't it? Oh, it's phenomenal. I was explaining it to a young musician friend of mine, and then I realized, oh my God, like you barely even know what a CD is, so you won't appreciate it. But I've watched it like 4 times. I love it because in Canada, a big thing for me to do, and it wasn't even that long ago, but you would go across the line to Seattle and you would go to Tower because they had everything. We couldn't get that stuff in Canada. So Tower Records is a huge part of my life. I go down and get the crisscross stuff and all the stuff that you couldn't get here. And so when I watched that video, that documentary, it was so fantastic.
And there were such huge record stores. I kind of got into a discussion because, like you were saying, one guy, vinyl's coming back. I'm like, it's a lot better than it was in the 90s. But if you look at how many, I did some research. 1978 was the height of vinyl. They sold 350 million records in 1978. Last year, 43 million. Crazy. 43 million total for last year. So we're a long way away from the peak of vinyl record sales.
Yeah,
for sure.
I guess you got to sort of take the small wins when you can get them. I mean, it definitely feels like there is an appreciation for the independent artist more so than has been in a long time, and I don't know how long it's going to last. Like, I love the fact that, I see people like, with these big records, like looking at them and like opening them up, and that to me kind of warms my heart because it's an investment in the music, and I think when people are making investments in the music, it's a I don't know, it just bodes well. I like it. So
yeah, it is. I always say that it's like you're ever since I was a kid, collecting the records, it's like you're investing in the band, or you're investing in the music. You're part of it, and having all the physical, whether it's CD or record, is part of that, being part of that. So
yeah, I agree, 100%.
All right, Cory, well, I appreciate it. I'm going to go ahead and stop
man.
this recording here. Thank you so much.
Anytime. Happy to talk anytime.